I want to talk about a very prominent and depressing issue that's going on in the UK right now, which is knife crime. This wasn't really a planned video, but I want to talk while it's fresh on my mind because I've just seen an ITV report that really opens up a fundamental aspect of this problem. So the reporter, the brave reporter, I might add, she's brave to get into that sort of situation, was interviewing two masked teenagers in Liverpool, hoods up, carrying weapons, carrying pretty large knives. And incredibly, their mother was supporting this. I assume they were brothers. Now, in the interview, which was separate, the interview with the mother and the interview with these two masked youths, I assume they were teenagers. Um, what I found striking was, this was outside. This is not even like the mother was with them during the interview, but basically, the reporter was saying, well, you're carrying knives, doesn't that make you a criminal? The guy said, I don't see myself as a criminal, I have to do it for protection. And this is the problem. Every knife thug says the same thing. They all say that. If carrying knives for protection, was a deterrent, then we wouldn't be seeing so many young people dying in London and Birmingham and elsewhere. And the sad reality is, while some of them have no connection to gang activity, a number of them do. And it's a byproduct of gang wars. So rival gang members are in the wrong place at the wrong time and they get set upon. Some of these attacks are truly sickening, where you get a mob of people launching an attack on an individual. I mean, that's sickening in any circumstance. Even without the addition of a knife, even a violent assault, it's always sickening when a gang attacks an individual. But this particular problem is now the worst it's been, apparently, the worst figures on record since the Second World War in terms of young people dying from fatal knife attacks. And that's not even including the number of people injured. I believe the figure that I've seen was 275 overall knife deaths in the UK over the last year. And out of those, 27 have been young people. Now, it's true that if we compare the UK to a country like Honduras or El Salvador, the rates of homicide in those countries are massive, far, far higher than the UK. So the UK is certainly not the most dangerous country in the world, but we have to look within the UK context, and without question, the problem has got worse. Um, and it really brought it home to me, with this local deaf Connor Brown in Sunderland, only 18 years old. Now, from what I could see, Connor had no involvement whatsoever in gang activity. He was popular in the community. He was an amateur boxer, amateur footballer. There's a shrine has been set up in the city centre, very close to the spot where he died. And there's a lot of charity events going on in his memory. In fact, the American boxer Shannon Briggs is going to be speaking at an event here in Sunderland in the following week as a fundraiser for the family. So that really brings it home. This is we hear of these things happening in London and Birmingham. Sunderland is a smaller city, and we don't really have a specific gang culture here. There's certainly rough estates in Sunderland, like there is everywhere, but it's not a particularly dangerous city. But this mentality, I have to do it because everyone else does, and they even acknowledge themselves it's a cycle. But what I found really galling was the excuses they were coming out with, like, "Oh, there's nothing for us to do. There's nothing for us to do, so that justifies stabbing someone. So that justifies carrying a lethal weapon around." I mean, we are really risking this knife problem becoming the equivalent of America's gun problem. And just for the record, I don't think Americans can lecture the UK on this problem, or any problem for that matter, because the problem of gun violence in America is endemic. It's severe. I don't know what actually the rates of American knife crime are. I'd be interested in seeing what that is. But it's sort of becoming the British equivalent. And what I would say though is there's less denial in this country. Most Britons recognise we have a serious problem, whereas there's a significant number of Americans are in denial about the gun violence problem. Anyway, not to make too many analogies because it's not exactly the same thing. Knives, of course, whereas guns are primarily weapons to kill. Knives can be used, as kitchen utensils, as they can be used for other purposes. Whereas guns are primarily to kill. But I think there has to be a uniform approach because someone carrying a knife intends to use it. And what these two basically admitted was, it's better to be in jail than dead. And there was no sort of sense of accountability. There was no sense of, well, if I'm caught, I'll go to prison. They didn't even sound like they were worried about that. In fact, his attitude was, I'm not bothered. I think there's a lot of things to look at. Diane Abbott was talking about violent video games. I wouldn't entirely rule that out. I think those who say that art's irrelevant, that you can't blame violence on media, I think they're being naive. I don't think it's the number one source, but I think it's naive to say that there isn't a specific culture going on that, I mean, I think she's not entirely wrong, except I would say she's maybe looking at the wrong medium. I think drill music has a lot to answer for. Well, so-called music. I would ban drill outright. I think drill is toxic poison. I don't think it should be legitimized as a normal thing. I mean, what drill music is swaggering thugs, literally talking about the crimes that they're going to commit and gang rivalry and so on. I mean, that even outdoes rap in terms of how blatantly obvious it is. So, some very naive people will say, oh, you can't blame music for it, but they don't understand the nature of drill music. I've seen enough of those disgusting videos to see what it's all about. And there has been cases where specific crimes have been referenced. And there was one case in Manchester that was actually used by the judge in prosecuting the defendants. I think it was the first of its kind. I think drill music should be banned. I really do. I mean, it may not cause these attacks in itself, but it definitely fuels the problem. Definitely. And I think anyone who would rationally look at those videos and say, oh, it's totally irrelevant, they need their head screwed on, frankly. They're not thinking clearly because you need to look at that toxic rubbish to see the sort of poison that it's promoting. I mean, drill music is fueling gang rivalries. You take it down, it decreases the tension because there's less of a source. I'm not saying that it would, gang rivalry would go away, but anything that decreases it has to be a good thing. So I definitely think Sajid Javid should look into that. But there's lots of things. I think knife amnesties have their place. There has been examples in the West Midlands where that has worked. So I don't see any reason why that shouldn't be attempted again. What I would do is have a nationwide, every police force um, having a nationwide amnesty, say, for 48 hours. Give knife thugs an opportunity to hand in their weapons anonymously. They won't be prosecuted. Hand in the weapons to a collection site, and that's it. That's it. That disposes of the excuse, well, we need to do it for protection. It has worked in the past, so why not look into that? Give a deadline, and as soon as that deadline passes, then get really draconian. Dawn raids. we need to get a grip on this thing because and that does mean giving the police more powers of arrest. Because it's bad enough when you have inter-gang rivalry, but when innocent people are caught up on it, in it, it's horrible. I mean, Britain is still a lot safer than many parts of the world, but that doesn't mean we can be complacent. This situation is escalating, and I'm just sort of seeing in the background right now. There's a Ross Kemp documentary which is showing a dawn raid in Birmingham. Kind of a coincidence. I mean, that literally just came on as I was watching this, as I was making this video. But it's very depressing, and this is just. I think it's just going to get worse if we don't really, frankly, support some pretty draconian measures. It's all very well, the Green Party approach. Oh, it's all to do with, well, we need to just understand them and not have any punishment. But there has to be very rigid deterrence. There has to be, and I get that jailing knife thugs won't necessarily stop other knife thugs, but at least it means that while they're in jail, they're not going around stabbing people. Um, Anyone that thinks the appropriate response to a knife crime, i.e., someone being stabbed, is a community sentence, that to me isn't just very reckless because when they get to that sort of level, you know, they're going to be laughing at that concept of a community sentence. As for there's nothing to do, I really take issue with that, and I don't think we should be pandering to what yobs and criminals and thugs are demanding. That, oh, there's nothing to do, give me something to do and I won't stab people. I mean, is that really what we're going to tolerate? No, they need to be told you are a thug, you're going to face consequences for what you're doing. And if that means giving the police more powers, then so be it. And I am wary of police brutality and all of that. It's something that you do, that's also an issue, but this is a situation that's getting out of control. We need to give police the power to act appropriately in those situations. Let me know your thoughts.